Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the CURT Trailer Wiring Harness for a 2021 Jeep Cherokee. If you're adding a hitch to your Cherokee, or maybe you already have one, adding some 4-pole wiring to it is going to be beneficial if you ever plan on pulling a trailer, because this is going to give you the light sequence when you are driving your vehicle to the trailer lights, and sometimes even accessories now use lights on them. Some bike racks will have them, and this will give you your running lights, your turn signals, as well as your brake lights. And this one's pretty easy to do because it uses factory style plugs to tie into your taillights, so it's not going to cause any issue as far as tying into your wiring. It's just going to simply jumper from that, and it's module protected, meaning if there is any issues as far as backfeed from your trailer, it's not going to damage any of your factory electronics. Now this is obviously a great option if you do plan on pulling a trailer, because it's going to keep you safe and legal, and honestly just keep you safe. That way people know what you're intending to do. And the great part is when you're not using it, it comes with this dust cap. You can simply just cap this on here on your safety chain loop, and it's going to be perfectly fine and safe from the elements. And that way when you already use it, pull this off, it'll be nice and clean. Now there's other options too. You can pick up some brackets that you can mount this up nice and solid. It's up to you, but this works just fine. The installation on this is relatively easy. As I mentioned, it uses factory style plugs to accomplish it. The main thing is you are going to be running a power wire up to your battery underneath the vehicle. With this one, once you kind of get over some of the suspension, you can kind of just run it in a panel, and so it's not too terribly hard to do. I'm going to walk you through all the steps to make sure you get your trailer wiring installed on your Cherokee. We're going to start our installation by kind of just laying out our wiring here, just so we have an idea of where we're going to be going. And these do just plug into the factory taillights and jump in between those, so you still maintain obviously your factory turn signals and brake lights, but these will get the signal. So we have a yellow, brown, red, and white here. You can see these wires are going to be for our driver's side or our left turn signal. Now we do have this extra wire here that's bundled up on the red and green, and that's going to be so we can run it over to our right turn signal. And this kind of follows down into our module here, which we obviously have our 4-pole, which we'll be mounting up by our hitch. We also have this black wire that has end stripped here. That's going to be attaching to our power wire that's included in the kit, and this is going to run up to our battery. We also have our ground wire here, which has a ring terminal, and we're going to be finding a nice factory ground for this. Now, to get all of our plugs in place, we are going to be pulling them up, so I'll show you how to do that. So we'll begin our actual installation by removing our tail lights. And there's going to be 2 T30 screws that we're going to go ahead and take out. Now, I do recommend having a nice organized spot to keep your hardware. That way reinstallation is a little bit easier. And with those taken out, to get the tail light out, you just kind of pull here and just kind of wiggle back and forth. There's going to be some tabs here on the side that go into rubber, so sometimes they can get a little bit tricky. If you need to, you can put a plastic trim tool and just kind of pry that back. But as you can see, we've gained access to our plugs. So what I'm going to do is get this separated by pulling down this red tab. Sometimes these can be a little bit tricky here. Well, it seems like ours is already pulled down here. So with that all the way down and flush with the bottom, you'll just push on that center and get your plug to separate. And with that tail light off, we'll go ahead and just repeat the exact same process on the other side. To get our driver's side wiring passed up and make our connection, we're going to be using, I have a spare airline tube. Really, you can use anything that's able to be passed down. So if you have a string and you can tie a nut to it to have some weight, this is going to allow us to feed this down, attach our harness that we're going to be plugging in, and pull it up. So this can be a little bit of a tight spot here. So just kind of find a nice opening. You can kind of see light underneath. Sometimes it helps put a flashlight. You can see exactly where you're passing it. Now with that passed through, we'll go ahead and grab our driver's side plug. So that is going to be our yellow, red, and brown. And the best way to do this that I've found is to kind of tape this to where it's going to be as flat as possible. You don't want to double stack these because they can get pretty wide. And just using some electrical tape to kind of make that attached to our pull wire is going to make sure that we can get this pulled up. Now when pulling this up, it might help to kind of feed it up here just to kind of I'll make sure that we're clearing some of the bottom portions. But once we get a nice clean path up, we should be able to get this pulled up. And then you can take your tape off. And you'll see that these match the OEM plugs, so we're just going to plug these in. It really can only go one way, so get those in the right position, lock those tabs back in, and we can actually go ahead and get our tail light put back in. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and run our right turn signal and right brake light plugs over. Now, main thing that we're going to want to do here is make sure there's obviously the exhaust here. We want to make sure these wires aren't going to be resting on that. So the best way that I've found is the decorative exhaust bezels. If you go up above that and kind of in between the fascia and the hitch, that's going to allow us to get this ran over. And then we're just going to use that same fish wire technique that we have over here to pull that up. And with this pulled up, we'll just go ahead and make our connections. Before we get anything else mounted up, a lot of times I like to get my power wire attached. That way you have plenty of room to be able to make your attachment a little bit easier rather than it being up there. So this one's stripped already. I'm going to kind of just get a little cleaner strip here on it. And there's going to be a butt connector that's included in the kit. Now you can absolutely use that. I tend to use heat shrink ones on anything that's going to live outside. And we have those available here at eTrailer. They're really nice because once you crimp this down, you heat it up with a heat gun, it's going to seal it up, making a nice watertight seal. And that way, you know, if it gets hit with any weather or just water from the road splashing up, you're not going to get any of that corrosion happening on your connection point. Now I'll come back with my heat gun and I'm just going to shrink this down, and a lot of times you'll start to see it have all the air bubbles kind of push out. Once you see like a little goop come out, you know that it's sealed up. So just go ahead and shrink this down if you're using that heat shrink butt connector. Now we're going to get our ground wire attached. Now I look for a factory ground stud to be able to just bolt this down. I didn't see anything, so we are going to be using our self-tapping screw. Now when attaching this with the self-tapping screw, you do want to make sure that this flat portion is against the metal, so you'll see that it is flush here. So just have that orientated properly. And sometimes this can get a little bit tricky, so if you need to, you can put a small pilot hole to get this started. Just make sure it's smaller than the diameter of your self-tapper. And then just tighten that down snug enough. Normally, if the ring terminal stays in place with putting a little pressure, you should be good. But if you go too heavy on these, it'll actually strip that hole out and not be secure anymore. Now we need to get our module mounted up, and there's a few ways that you can do this. There is a double-sided foam tape here, which is going to work really well on this flat surface, as it is pretty flat up there. Just make sure it's clean so it has a good surface to adhere to. Now, some things that I tend to do is also use this tab. You can use a self-tapper to mount it up this way. You can also use this for a zip tie to kind of wire it around some factory wire loom, just to kind of give it some added security in case this over time isn't sticky. So whatever works best for you. Main thing is this portion here where the wires go in, it is all sealed, but I really do recommend if you're going to be mounting it vertically, have it this way so water doesn't pool in there. So I've just gone ahead and used that double-sided tape here. I'm also going to eventually, once we get all of our wires kind of in place, zip tie this up just for added security. So at this point, I'm going to get my four-way ran exactly where I want it near my hitch. I've gone ahead and pulled all of our extra wire over that we had slack from our other, as well as the extra 4-pole after routing it. And I've just gone ahead and used the hitch with a few zip ties to kind of keep that nice and tight. You can see our 4-pole we're going to have right here. And if you're not, you can pick up a 4-pole bracket that's going to create a nice solid mounting point, but this is also a great alternative. You can use the dust cap to loop around your safety chain loop, and that's going to work just the same. Now that I pulled all the wires back, I did kind of clean them up and just kind of zip tie them up to where they're going to be out of the way of the exhaust. I don't have to worry about that making contact. So all that's left is our power wire, which I've gone ahead and used some of the factory wire loom to kind of follow. I then went over the rear cross member, and I did zip tie that up and just kind of made my way over to this outside plastic. And this is where it kind of gets a little bit easier. You can simply just kind of tuck this in here. And if you want to, you can pull down the hardware and tuck the wires behind it. And that way, when you put the hardware back in, it really doesn't have a place to go. It's nice and protected here. And I just ran all the way up underneath that panel, until I made my way right here. And then at the engine bay, you're going to want to see that the battery's on the driver's side. Try to find a nice open route and then run your fish wire through. And same technique, we're just going to tape that up, pull it through. And you're also going to want to make sure not only exhaust anymore, but suspension, steering, anything that's going to be moving. Obviously, you don't want that wire to get pinched in there, so just make sure you have a nice clear path going up to your battery. Now I'm going to just pull up my excess wire and make sure that we have all of our slack taken out. So at this point, we obviously are going to be going to the positive on the battery terminal, and we have plenty of extra wire. We're also going to be attaching our fuse holder, so I am going to go ahead and cut this. And our fuse holder here is just looped, so you can kind of cut that wherever you want. And then we'll strip back both ends. I'm going to go ahead and use a heat shrink butt connector again underneath the engine bay, and that way, again, if it gets wet, it's going to be protected. The other end of our fuse holder, we're going to go ahead and put our supplied ring terminal that came with the kit on top of here. Now it's important, you can see that I have my fuse out. Don't put that fuse in until we're completely hooked up to the battery. We don't want power surging through here. And on our battery positive terminal here, we'll go ahead and attach our ring terminal. And I'm going to go ahead and do this back one. This is kind of a tensioning one that just kind of tightens that clamp down. And sometimes you end up having to cut the ring terminal to slide it through, where this one I think we should be fine. Now we can zip tie up our fuse holder in a nice clean fashion to where it's out of the way, but also not just loose in the engine bay. And once we're happy with that, we can go ahead, put our fuse in place, and then all that's left to do before using our new wiring is test to make sure that it works. Now we'll be testing our 4-pole wiring with a 4-pole tester that we have here, and this is nice because it keeps it specific to just the vehicle. But if you don't have one of these and you want to just test it before you hit the road, the best way to do it, hook it up to your trailer and then run through the light sequence with someone checking the back, and that way you can see that all the lights are functioning. Now I'm running through the light sequence. First we'll start with our running lights. Next we'll do our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and then finally our brakes. Now with all of that working properly, we can go ahead and either start using our 4-pole or just put this back on our hitch until the next time we need to use it. And that was a look and installation of the CURT 4-pole trailer wiring harness on a 2021 Jeep Cherokee.